T.C.Boyle liest aus seinem Roman Die Frauen.
Um, the book is about four women who loved Frank Lloyd Wright at different times and who loved him very differently. What has the book taught you about love?
Well, as many of you already know, I have been the handservant and slave of one single Frau for my entire adult life. Again, I don't know much about German culture and how the men treat their women, but from my perspective, Frau Boyle is a queen. She lies on the couch, she eats bonbons, I rub her feet, and I do everything else. I do all the work. This is how it is with the German men, right? She felt the fear seize her then. A cold hand laid on the back of her neck. She was going to die here. She was sure of it, lost and abandoned in a place where her French was of no use to her, or her Southern charm either. And her children would never know, her friends, Frank, nobody. She'd be like that dog lying bloated at the side of the road. At that moment, as the bell sounded and the door swung back and she stood there frozen while the taxi receded down the street, two women in mantillas came up the walk behind her, their black hair braided and their eyes ducking away from hers. And what did they want? They wanted to go through the door. That was it. And she was in their way, and they were waiting for her, politely, respectfully. She came to her senses then, murmured an apology, illogically in French, pardon, and stepped into the store. It was close and dark, hotter even, if that was possible, than the street outside. Slowly, as her eyes began to adjust, the features of the place started to take on shape. There were jars everywhere, a cornucopia of jars, and in the jars, various dried herbs and potions, and there were folded browning sheaves of plants suspended from the ceiling to dry, the smell of them musty and bitter and sweet all at once. And the counter behind which stood a man identical to the spineless physicians and pharmacists of Los Angeles and San Diego counties, right down to the spectacles and the bald dome of his head, except that his skin was the color of the varnish and a very old chest of drawers. And what was that in the jar at his elbow? Chicken's feet? She thought of the apothecary shop and Romeo and Juliet, the mad mixer of potions. And what was the word she wanted? The word she'd practiced all the way down here in the cab. Un dormidero. That was it. Un dormidero. But then the man behind the counter smiled at her, a broad, winning, helpful, and welcoming smile. Anything can be purchased here, senora, anything at all. That was what his smile said. And the word flew right out of her head. He said something then, something she didn't catch and couldn't be expected to, but the gist of it was obvious. How may I help you? Feeling better now, feeling herself again, or nearly herself, she straightened up and approached the counter, giving him his smile back even as the two women who'd followed her in browsed among the jars of the mysterious contents. What she said then was contained in a single word, a word she hadn't had to memorize. Morfina? She watched his eyes. Do you understand? His smile widened. He nodded. I want, she said carefully, morfina. Thanks.